Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a wildly provocative thought experiment. I mean, imagine treating a struggling sovereign nation exactly like a failing corporation that's in desperate need of a ruthless turnaround strategy. Think about that for a second. What if you took the absolute bottom line pragmatism of a corporate boardroom and slapped it right on a national governance? Well, that's exactly what we're looking at today. We're going to unpack what happens when you apply hyper-aggressive management principles to national policy during a massive crisis. To really get into this, we're breaking down an incredibly unique text from 2010. It claims to channel the spirit of the legendary management guru Peter F. Drucker. But here's the twist. It doesn't present him just as your standard business theorist, but as a literal cosmic consultant who is evaluating Japan's national strategy. It begs the question, right? How ruthless and honestly, how visionary would a corporate turnaround plan for an entire country actually look? We're going to walk through its core strategic arguments completely neutrally. Because honestly, regardless of where you stand on the origins of the text itself, it's a fascinating thought experiment that pushes the absolute extreme limits of statecraft. The source actually lays out this highly controversial blueprint in a strict four-step corporate turnaround pitch. We'll be looking at 1. A current evaluation. 2. Domestic restructuring. 3. Aggressive expansion. And 4, the consultant's secret. So let's analyze this objectively and see what happens when boardroom logic meets statecraft. Okay, step 1, the executive summary, harsh evaluation. The consultant's pitch begins with a brutal performance review of the existing board of directors, which, in this specific case, was the 2010 political administration in Japan. Diving into Chapter 2, titled Managing Japan, the text argues that the leadership completely lacked the kind of holistic vision you need to run a country. It points out that they were way too focused on bureaucracy bashing just to score quick political points, and in doing so, they completely lost sight of the big picture. The core critique here highlights a dangerous misalignment of priorities. The text claims the government was prioritizing welfare and wealth distribution way over the actual engine of wealth creation. From a corporate consultant's perspective, look, if you are entirely focused on handing out the budget without building new industries to replenish it, you are on a fast track to bankruptcy. The logic is simple, right? You literally cannot distribute wealth that you aren't producing. The text really pulls no punches here. It harshly labels the leadership as amateur management. It even coins this term, flowing water administration, basically meaning that the leadership was just drifting along, merely reacting to immediate currents, instead of actually grabbing the wheel and steering the ship. So the ultimate takeaway from this first step? If the government can't lead, well, the private sector is going to have to step up and rebuild the nation itself. Which brings us to Step 2, domestic restructuring, future industry and infrastructure. Since the government is failing to lead, this phase outlines a radical overhaul of domestic operations driven almost entirely by the private sector. Think of it like this. If the nation is a failing corporation, this is exactly how we restructure the factory floor. To kickstart innovation, the strategy demands sweeping deregulation. But how do you actually decide which red tape to cut? Well, the crucial metric here is the speed of work. If a regulation slows down the speed at which work gets done or how businesses operate, it gets slashed. Boom, gone. It is an incredibly pragmatic, efficiency-first approach to government bureaucracy. And by clearing out all that red tape, it suddenly opens the door for massive infrastructure investment. The blueprint pushes for a huge transportation revolution. We're talking prioritizing things like high-speed maglev trains. It envisions these ultra-modern urban redevelopments completely packed with high-rise cities. And crucially, all of this is designed while heavily fortifying the infrastructure against natural disasters like earthquakes, as well as terrorism. It's effectively protecting the nation's brand-new corporate assets. Now, the source then suggests a really surprising tactical pivot. It proposes a period of temporary psychological national isolation, referencing Japan's historical sakoku. But wait, this isn't about walling off the borders completely like some medieval fortress. Instead, it's about turning inward for roughly 10 years to deeply fortify the domestic economy and fiercely protect domestic research and development from global information leaks. It's essentially a corporate strategy, right? You safely incubate your next-generation industries in total security before you unleash them onto the global market. Moving on to Step 3, aggressive expansion, national-level M&A. This step pivots away from domestic operations to a genuinely staggering, hyper-aggressive growth strategy meant to combat severe demographic decline. This is where the blueprint really looks at geopolitics.
To maintain its economic ground and avoid shrinking out of existence, the text insists that Japan must adopt a massive, highly ambitious vision, rapidly scaling up to a population of 300 million people. Let that sink in. In corporate terms, a shrinking nation is essentially downsizing itself into irrelevance. You simply have to scale up to survive.
But you might be wondering, how exactly do you scale up a population that quickly? Because standard immigration is deemed way too slow. The source introduces a wildly controversial concept: national M&A. Yeah, you heard that right. This literally means treating sovereign states just like corporate entities and applying real merger and acquisition strategies directly to them. The text explicitly argues that bringing in, say, 500,000 immigrants a year just isn't going to cut it. To truly survive, the nation has to operate on a massive scale. It needs to actively acquire or heavily integrate with other territories to rapidly boost its population, its resources, and its geopolitical leverage. The proposed diplomatic roadmap targets here are exceptionally bold. The most striking recommendation is a national M&A involving Taiwan, suggesting its acquisition or integration as a quasi-state to instantly boost the nation's scale. Alongside that, the text proposes forming aggressive, ironclad strategic partnerships with massive markets like India and Australia. It is such a fascinatingly clinical, boardroom-style approach to international relations and territorial expansion. And finally, step 4, the consultant's secret: Drucker's past life. Up to this point, you might actually be scratching your head wondering, why on earth is a spirit claiming to be a corporate management guru proposing aggressive national isolation and the geopolitical acquisition of neighboring territories? Well, the text drops a pretty startling twist. The spirit of Drucker claims to have been a highly skilled military strategist in ancient China in a past life. This completely recontextualizes the entire turnaround plan. Suddenly, these proposals for national M&A and rapid domestic fortification aren't just corporate management theories anymore. They are ancient military strategies. It's literally the art of war translated into 21st century survival tactics. This leaves us with a really provocative final thought. When a nation faces a true existential crisis, like demographic collapse or severe economic stagnation, can the clinical, cut-and-dry logic of the corporate boardroom actually provide a path to survival? Or does treating a nation like a corporate entity completely ignore the complex, human, cultural, and diplomatic realities of a sovereign state? This text offers an uncompromising vision that really forces us to question the absolute limits of how a nation can, and perhaps should, be managed. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the frameworks that shape our world.